Bienvenidos, buenas tardes. Welcome. My name is Javier Valdivielso. I am the director of Instituto Cervantes, New York. Thank you for being here with us and making this event possible to celebrate 100 years of the Rioja designation of origin. Rioja D.O is one of Spain's most prestigious and internationally recognized brands. Spain and wine cultivation go hand in hand in many ways. A way of life, a culture, and economy. And for us, as Instituto Cervantes, it's natural to add enology and gastronomy to our cultural program, especially since the historical series of wine tastings that we organize thanks to the collaboration of Helio San Miguel. This evening, we welcome distinguished guest, Pablo Álvarez, CEO of Tempos Vega Sicilia, Jesús Madrazo, renowned Rioja winemaker, and Víctor Ordóñez, representative of Bodegas Muga. Thank you all for your presence and for contributing a series of extraordinary wines that we will have the opportunity to taste after this panel discussion. First, we will have a video with the presentation of the Rioja denomination of origin. Thank you.
They say the Romans invented everything. Roads, aqueducts, gladiators. But long before they arrived, in Rioja, we already had a passion of our own, wine. The 1st century, while some were fighting in the Colosseum, we were cultivating vineyards, because great civilizations are measured not only by their achievements, but also by the quality of their wine. In the Middle Ages, between prayers and chants, the monks uncovered something truly divine, Rioja, because saving the soul is important, but so is enjoying a good glass of wine. The 17th century, while the rest of the world searched for gold and spices, in Rioja we had our own treasure. In 1650, the first written mention of Rioja's quality appeared, a simple message that echoed through time. This is too good not to share. 1790, we got serious and established the Royal Council of Harvesters with one clear goal: to organize ourselves so the whole world could enjoy our wines. 1867, phylloxera struck France, and French winemakers searched for a region to match their refined palates. With their arrival, Bordeaux techniques like oak barrel aging spread through Rioja. 1925. Saying Rioja was unique was no longer enough. It had to be protected. So Rioja became Spain's first denomination of origin. 1980. Rioja doubled down on quality. Year-based control and aging categories were introduced. Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva, all Rioja's creation, because quality doesn't happen by chance. 1991, Rioja earned the qualified designation of origin with bottled at source and separation of winemaking and aging facilities as key requirements. This put us at the highest level of quality seals and made us the undisputed leader in Spain's most prestigious wine category. In the 21st century, we remain true pioneers in Spain's wine sector. 2003, Rioja created Spain's first wine interprofessional body, giving all grower and winemaker associations a voice in managing the designation based on their market share. We've championed the development of Rioja rosés, whites, and sparkling wines. Beyond our signature styles, we've embraced the diversity of our terroir, creating new labels like single vineyard, village wines, and zone wines. And here we are, 100 years later, 600 winery, 13,000 wine growers, over 320 million bottles sold each year in 136 countries, 1.5 billion euros in turnover, 900,000 winery visitors. Vivir el vino Tradition, innovation, 100 kilometers of diversity. That's Rioja. Not just Spain's most recognized wine, but a whole philosophy of life. Let's toast to another 100 years living and breathing wine.
This event is made possible with the support of the Rioja Denomination of Origin and the Trade Commission of Spain in New York, whose collaboration underscores the cultural and economic significance of Spanish wine in the international arena. And thanks to the idea proposed to us by Helio San Miguel and the work of the entire team of Instituto Cervantes. I give now the floor to Carlos Jimenez, Senior Trade Commissioner of the Spanish Trade Commission in New York.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is both a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight with all of you in order to celebrate the 100 years of the denomination of origin of Rioja. I want to thank, of course, the Instituto Cervantes for the organization of this event, and special thanks to Helio. Helio was passion, dedication, and tireless effort to organize this meeting. It, we suppose, will be a very high and important success. But this evening is not just for tasting wines, excellent wines, as you can see in this video. It is about tradition, some values, which are very important, as Javier pointed out before, like tradition, like terroir, and like excellence, because Rioja means excellence. In the last 100 years, one of the main trademarks of Spain is Rioja, which means excellence, because it's not only wine, what we pour out in a glass. It's culture, climate, or people. Many things together. And that's why we are today here in the Instituto Cervantes, because culture, wine, and market are all together. Then I think after this video, it's very difficult to repeat all the values and all the things that Rioja means. But I think there is a very important thing to say. Rioja has proved that tradition and innovation can work hand to hand. After these meetings and after these discussions, we think we will raise our glass to toast to the Cervantes, to the Rioja, to Helio, and to all the vineyards and the winemakers that are here tonight. Thank you very much.
And now I give the floor to Rodrigo Gutierrez, North American Business Director of the Denomination of Origin Rioja.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to the Instituto Cervantes, to the ICEX, to Helio, for not just tonight, but all the wine tastings that are helping us sharing what I think is one of our biggest assets in Spain, which is wine. That goes very well along with the ICEX and with Instituto Cervantes, because this sharing our culture, our wines, our passions and our values, that's something that we also do in Rioja. The history of wine in Rioja dates back over 2,000 years, when the Phoenicians left the first traces of winemaking in what we call Rioja now. But what we're doing here is celebrating 100 years of commitment with quality. It was in 1925 when winemakers, grape growers, and the wine industry got together in Rioja to create this denominación de origen. That implied to set a framework of rules, a framework of standards to produce only high quality wine. That's what we're doing here tonight. We're celebrating that commitment that it still endures, a commitment with quality. And my work here, as I was saying before, is focused on sharing our values, our traditions, our culture. And we can do that in many ways. Same as the Instituto Cervantes, what they're doing here is defending our values, our traditions, our language, our art, and our culture in general. We share that job here in the United States. And that's why the Denominación de Origen Rioja and Instituto Cervantes share a common goal. This goal is to celebrate and preserve the richness of Spanish culture. And for that reason, the Consejo Regulador of the Denominación de Origen Calificada Rioja is proud to honor the Instituto Cervantes for its outstanding work in the Americas by presenting you with the Rioja Centennial box. I think that we have it here. As a token of our admiration and gratitude for your exceptional contribution to Spanish culture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will invite the panelists to come here to the stage, please. Today we have with us Pablo Álvarez, CEO of Tempos Vega Sicilia, Jesús Madrazo, Rioja winemaker, and Víctor Ordóñez, representative of Bodegas Muga. Helio San Miguel will be the moderator. Helio San Miguel was born in Madrid. He has a PhD in philosophy and an MFA in film. He's an editor, he's a co-editor, he's a writer, he's a filmmaker. But in addition to all of this, Helio is a wine expert, contributor to magazines specializing in Spanish wines, and the key figure in the wine tastings we have been organizing in years, the first and only ones we have continued to organize on a regular basis since the opening of this center in New York. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. I can recognize many faces here. So, because this year is the 2025, then I had the idea of organizing here this event to celebrate 100 years of Rioja. As you have seen in the video, Rioja is way older than this appellation of origin, but the appellation of origin has become now the way to recognize regions with a specific personality, and the system was created in Spain in the 20s. And then Rioja was the first one. I think that, many of you already know, but I actually think that Rioja is one of the finest wine regions in the world, and is also a region that produces wines that are very unique. Today, many people consider that it's very typical to produce wines for one vineyard or another, and that those vineyards, they actually have its own personality, but there are other ways to have great personality, and normally today there seems to be an equation between terroir and personality. So in Rioja, for historical reasons, there were thousands and thousands of growers. You saw in the video there were 30,000, and very few wineries at the beginning. And then, as a result of that, Rioja created different style and different way to distinguish great wines. And these wines have remained also for, especially at the very beginning, very much unknown, and especially for their great personality and the great capacity of aging. Last night, Jesus can see that, a group of friends, since Jesus were here, we took him for dinner at a restaurant, and we served some wines blind, and we served wines from all over the world, but to finish the red wines that we have before dessert, we actually opened blind a 1925 Marqués de Murrieta Castillo y Gay to celebrate the 100 years now that. So that wine not only was not dead, or even the wine, Jesus maybe can refer to that later from the point of view of a great winemaker, was actually maybe the best wine of the dinner. And I'm not talking of thinking about the past and all. I'm thinking at that moment while we were eating. The best wine, and completely alive in color, in aroma, and in flavor. Yeah? With an excellent, it's hard to translate in English. For those of you who speak Spanish, we have a term for wine which is fantastic, and I still don't know how to translate it, which is paso de boca. It's the way it goes through the mouth, which encompasses all other things. And the wine was really great. And today, I do believe that it's much easier to recognize a Rioja Gran Reserva, especially a really good Rioja Gran Reserva. It's much easier to recognize it, that it's much easier to recognize a couple of Grand Crus from Burgundy. Okay? Many people here, they already know my love for Burgundy. So, especially red. Okay? So, to discuss that situation today, the situation of Rioja and the future, because Rioja also has issues like everybody, and Rioja, as you see, is a very old wine region. It has its first transformative period, as you saw, in the second half of the 19th century, and later, the 20th century in Spain, especially until the 70s, was quite convulsive. So Rioja also suffered and succeeded in those situations. In the 70s, created the Chateau style in Spain, with the wine where Jesus was working for is one of the pioneer and protagonist. Then later in the 90s, the new Riojas were introduced, maybe more international in style, but again, same aging capacity, as you can see now that they are more than 30 years old. And then now we live in a moment in which Rioja is trying to promote regional differentiation and single vineyards. So it's a very exciting moment. So to discuss this, we actually have representatives of 3 wineries. So here on my left, Muga, which is one of the historic wineries of Rioja. That's what I wanted to represent, 3 different approaches. So Bodegas Muga is almost 100 years old. And to represent it, we have Víctor Ordóñez, which is the agent and the importer. Then we have Jesús Madrazo, who is an agricultural engineer and an enologist. He was the technical director of Contino for over 20 years. Contino was the pioneer of the estate wines, as I mentioned before, and now is one of the most renowned winemakers, not only in Rioja, but also in Spain, and is making wines under his own label as a personal project. And then we have Pablo Álvarez, the CEO of Vega Sicilia, that I'm sure you're familiar with. It's basically the most kind of rare wine in Spain by far. And then when they decided to expand beyond the Duero, they actually chose Rioja and started a new wine in 2009 in the area of San Vicente de la Sonsierra called Macan. So I want to just that they talk. I'm just here to moderate, okay? You know, I talk a lot every single week here, as you can see. So the question that I think is the best way to start today is how do you see the present moment in Rioja, and how do you see the immediate future, taking into account everything, market conditions, the changes in regulations, the situation in the world about wine and all. So we can start with you, Victor, since you represent the oldest winery.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Helio. Thank you for having me, of course, and thank you to the Instituto for putting on such an amazing event. My name is Víctor Ordóñez, third generation producer, importer, merchant, distributor of Spanish wines. Our family got our start in the Spanish wine business in the late 1950s in the south of Spain, in the city of Malaga. And in 1987, my dad, Jorge, moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and founded an import agency and began promoting high-quality Spanish wines in the U.S. and was one of the early pioneers in that resurgence of the Spanish category in the United States. And Bodegas Muga is a winery that we have a very, very long and important relationship with. We feel like we're almost a part of the family, and we feel like their family is almost a part of our family. Because we've worked representing their wines since 1983 in the city of Malaga as the distributor. Our family is the oldest distributor in the world, still of Bodegas Muga, longest running, in the south of Spain in the city of Malaga, and we've sold the wines in the United States since 1992. So we've had a very close relationship with this iconic historic family for a very, very long time. Muga is a winery that was founded in 1932 in the town of Aro in northwest Rioja, one of the famous 7 wineries in the Barrio de la Estación train station district, famous for iconic wineries like Cune, like López de Heredia, etc. And I think what makes Muga unique is that it's a family-owned company through and through. And it's a family-owned company that still today is owned and operated by the 3rd generation of the family. A winery that is artisanal and traditional without fail. The only winery in Spain that employs a master cubero, a master cooper who specializes in producing fermentation vats. So one of the only wineries in the world that can build, produce, maintain fermentation vats that are up to 80 years old. One of the only wineries that I know of in the world that bottles all the red wines unfined and unfiltered. The entire process is racked by gravity. All the red wines are protein fined with fresh cracked egg whites. They employ a guy whose only job is to crack egg whites every hour of every day, 60,000 eggs a year. So I share all this stuff to communicate how traditional and how artisanal of a property it is. At the same time, a winery that I think has known really well how to engage with the modern generation, and a winery that has known how to integrate modern technology and modern techniques into the winemaking process so that the wines have a very strong foot in the past, but also a very strong foot in the future. I think for that reason, it's an interesting angle to take on where Rioja is going as an appellation, because obviously we find ourselves in a market where wine consumption in the United States is down 7% in the last 12 months. Spanish wines specifically 4%. But I think Muga sales and other premium Rioja wineries are doing quite well, and I think we have to ask ourselves why that is. I feel very optimistic. I know the winery feels very optimistic because I think a lot of the evolutions and a lot of the changes and kind of the new categories and stuff like this that Rioja is betting on are things that are meant to improve the prestige and the quality of the wines and their presence in the market. I think one of the things that should be highlighted when talking about Muga and in general with Rioja and compared to other prestigious winemaking appellations is that when wines from Rioja arrived in the US, the tip of the spear were quality high-end wineries. So if you compare that to a category like Italian wines, the tip of the spear were cheap bottles of Chianti with the straw covering, right? And so Rioja started in the US market from the top, and I think it's allowed the appellation and the region to command good prestige from the wine-consuming public. It's allowed wine consumers to, pay what a good bottle of Rioja is worth. And that's very different than other export markets that Rioja might have, which are large export markets but are more focused on the volume and the inexpensive end of the spectrum. So I feel very optimistic about not only the way that Rioja is going, but also its presence in the U.S. market. I think that if I were to talk about what we have to do moving forward to keep that optimism high in such a challenging wine market like we have in the U.S. right now, I would say keep betting on quality. And I think that obviously the appellation is given the other two fine gentlemen that I have at the table here with me. And so, yeah, I feel very excited. Obviously, you know, I think, I'm sure we'll get a little more into this, but speaking into the new rules about vinos de municipio and vinos de pueblo and viñedos singulares, these are things that our family and the Muga family share the opinion that these are positive things that, you know, have good intentions in terms of promoting regional, village, and terroir differences across the appellation. Anyone in here who's been to Rioja knows that there's a tremendous diversity in the D.O. that goes far beyond, you know, what's typically communicated in the market about Rioja. And so those are good things. I do think that, you know, winemakers, our end of things, the producing side of things, need to take those things to heart and focus on what they're meant to be, which is a communication of different areas and not necessarily trying to copycat Burgundy stylistically. You mentioned Burgundy earlier. And I think some of the younger winemakers in particular have really kind of leaned into this idea of trying to produce Burgundy and Rioja. I think philosophically it's good, but I think the style of wines, you know, Rioja is not Burgundy and Tempranillo is not Pinot Noir. And so I think, you know, it's good to bet on those regional differences and communicate those on the labels while also respecting and maintaining the style of what Rioja is and should be, which is a unique and singular wine.
Okay, so now Jesus, I forgot to say that Jesús Madrazo also belongs to the 5th generation of the founding families of Cune, which is another of the most historical regions, historical wineries in Rioja. Jesus?
Yeah, thank you. 5th generation means that there is more wine in my blood than blood. So, yeah, well, present and future. I'm as well. I'm very optimistic, but I am very scared at the same time. Sales are going down, consumption is going down, image of the wine, especially reds, are like bad for health. So many things are changing in this moment, and so it makes me to be a bit scared about the future or the close future of Rioja. I'm sure Rioja is a very strong name and region, and we have great winemakers, great CEOs and managers, and we will survive for sure. But the way the things are going needs change if we don't want to have a bigger crisis than we have today. And I think the only solution is to produce better and to produce less, much less than we are producing right now. Of course, we produce great wines, but as one friend of me told me a long time ago, there are a lot of how to translate falsos buenos. It's like good fake wines, which is there is no anything wrong with them, like volatile acidity high or very poor acidity or bread or whatever problem you want. They are very well done and at very cheap price, and that's one of the problems. There's a huge volume of those. It's true that maybe not in this market, but Germany and some other markets, they ask for those cheap wines.
But that's also becoming more relevant here, unfortunately.
Okay, I didn't know that, so it's not good news. But anyway, and I arrived on Monday and directly to Pennsylvania, house of some friends that I long time met when I was in Contino. And then it's good to come to the USA because the first wine they opened to me was a 68 Vega Sicilia Unico. That was the very start of Monday, and then yesterday was, apart from another 12 wines, average $1,000 each one, was the 25 the 25 Castillo di Gai Murrieta, and it was blind, and I said, well, this is something familiar to me. I was thinking about an old Contino. It isn't, of course, but it was a Rioja, and I can recognize the Rioja character. And I thought, I didn't say because we are having fun, and so it was not a question to debate last night, but I think we are doing something wrong. What makes Rioja famous in the whole world is to produce those kind of wines that can age, that are fine wines, that are something superior, and that not many regions, including for sure Burgundy, and for sure Bordeaux, and probably Barolo is the only one exception I will do. And we have that capacity of creating jewels that can age for many, many years. There are people, I heard in a podcast, 2-star Michelin in Spain, and a great sommelier, Alberto Redrado in La Escaleta. He said that today we are not producing wines that can age. I completely disagree with that. I can give you hundreds of examples. I opened like 3 months ago a Maceto 2001 from Tuscany, and against Aro 2001, and I sent a picture to Manuel. And Viña del Olivo 2001, so 24 years of each one, and the winner was Aro, and second was Viña del Olivo, and the third one was Maceto. 3 of them were fantastic wines. Aro and Viña del Olivo are considered to be modern style wines, and they were still very young. They had like another 10 years ahead. And I think that when you do the things in a good sense, with good facilities and knowledges and good terroir and good grapes, the wines will age. Even if we are in modern style, like you can't use new oak now. It's forbidden to use new oak, no? And I mean, come on, how do you want that the wines arrive to 30, 40, 50 years more if you don't use any new oak? Well, anyway, because I think Pablo has a lot to say also. But we are not Burgundy, and there is tremendous. I produce wines in Murcia, I produce wines in Ribera del Duero, mainly in Rioja, which is my home. But what I see is a big movement of using whole clusters, not having a lot of alcohol, which means sometimes that you use physical ways to reduce that alcohol, and not natural ways like having a very early harvest, with everything is green. And I saw many Monastral Mourvedre looking like a Pinot Noir. Bobal is even worse. Bobal looking like a Pinot Noir, and some Grenache and some Tempranillos looking like Pinot Noirs. And that movement is organized by somebody, and I don't know who, but it's a big mistake. We can't lose our identity. There's a lot of different wines in Rioja. Most of them are great wines. But if we go that way, because people can't drink anymore like 13 or 13.5, then we are going in a wrong direction. Sorry.
Okay, so just one note in case that people are not familiar with, but if we discount La Mancha in Spain, the south of France, and the south of Italy, in terms of volume and production, Bordeaux is the largest appellation in the world with 100,000 hectares, although now they are uprooting some, and Rioja is the second, okay? So it's with like 70,000 hectares and all. So just for context. So now Pablo, which is kind of ironic to introduce him as the newcomer of Rioja in this table.
Well, we are speaking 40 years ago about the same. I am the oldest here, always heard the same. the crisis, what happened with the wine, and we continue with the same history. But it's true first that Spain never produced so much good wines like now.
Yes.
In all the region. But there are many people who is making good wines in all the world, and every time more. So it's not a question the people Jesus say about we must reduce the production. I am not sure if it's why don't reduce the other ones, no? We must fight, we must move, we must show the wines that we are producing, no? I don't know, in Rioja, in Ribera del Duero, there are 317 wineries and only export wine 100. I don't know in Rioja which one is the statistics, no? So I think if we produce good wines, why we don't sell better the wines? Never. You go to one restaurant and there are no Spanish wines. I told him some restaurants there are more wines from Lebanon than from Spain. This is stupid, no? But happened that, no? So why? What is happening in the market? Or we don't move, or I don't know. I'm traveling 50% of my time 40 years ago in the world, no? And we are in 150 countries. So I think for me is the only one solution, no? To move, to work, to show the wines that we produce great wines in Spain. And better than in other countries. It's true that there are many reasons because the wine is in crisis. There are problems in the wine world, in all the world, in all the countries. This is true, no? But, well, there are maybe if don't change the problems, we disappear, no? But I hope that the future must be or can be good if we work better than now, no? So this is for me is, I don't know, Rioja, we are in Rioja. Rioja, I think that is the best region in Spain. We are in Ribera, but Ribera is nothing. But there are very good wines too, no? But Rioja historically, there are historical wineries and great wines, and they are the more important region in Spain for me, no? So Bordeaux has a big problem. It's a pity that Bordeaux has great problems, because if Bordeaux has problems, we are very sick, no? I think all the world is very bad when Bordeaux is not working well, no? And it's a pity, Bordeaux is a great region, and if they move and if they make well the work, we will stop again, no? Well, sorry, my English is not so good, but I know what I want to say, but I don't know if you understand me. So for me, the future of the wine can be fantastic, no? If we work, we show the wines that we produce. We start in Tokai, but nobody knows Tokai in the world, no? And after 33 years, we are selling well the Tokai, no? So, and the sweet wines, there are problems in the sweet wines in the world, no? And the only one way is to work, no? So I think that the wine Rioja is better than ever in the wines, in the quality. Sometimes, if you don't mind, I am not agree with some things that in Spain happen sometimes, not to declare clasificada all the region. This is to make kings to everybody. This is not the sense of the calificada, no? After the vino de pago, where is the vino de pago? It disappears, don't exist. Now is the single vineyard. I respect, but how many hundred single vineyards there are now in Spain? This is good. This is good for you, that you need to know more the Spanish wines, or it's a big problem is another problem. To know every single vineyard we are not Burgundy. Burgundy is created 300, 400, I don't know how many years ago, no? So it's not easy to create something similar. See that you say everybody is looking before, after Parker, now everybody needs to produce Burgundy wines. I don't know, I prefer to drink Burgundy, no? Not the style of Burgundy in Spain, no? So we must produce our wines. Our wines are great wines and has the Tempranillo. We say that the Tinto Fino is the best variety when the maduration is finished. The Tempranillo, the Tinto Fino is Tempranillo, so it's maybe the best variety in the world for me. We use Cabernet Sauvignon, but Vega Sicilia is not better because we have Cabernet Sauvignon. It's for the Tempranillo, the Tinto Fino, no? It's a great. So we must show what we are doing, no? And not crying permanently, no? We are always, I don't know what happened, but everybody is, we look like the economy in Japan, no? That 30 years is in crisis. I don't know how it's in crisis always, and is the second or the third economy in the world, no? Always happens. In the wine, in Spain, always happened the same, no? And, what?
And it's true because especially today, Spain produces more good wines than ever, and they are better known. I mean, still there is a lot to do because Italy and France, they've been doing that way before, especially when all this luxury market was created after Second World War. Spain didn't have the chance to incorporate there. But when I started teaching the classes at the All Spanish Institute, I was a grad student. And then I remember I came to New York and then I started subscribing to all the magazines. And then I saw that even in the Wine Advocate, in the Wine Spectator, that was so famous, they used to review Imperial Gran Reserva, Muga Gran Reserva. And they used to say, drink this wine over the next 5 years. And I was in my 20s, okay? So I was like, what the hell? Over the next 5 years? I mean, these people, they have never drank a Gran Reserva from Rioja. And
Helio,
then, yes.
Tomorrow I start the wine experience. How many wineries from Spain there are?
Yeah, like what? Yeah, 10. I mean, I don't know how many, but and then on the other hand, they were saying these wines, whatever, give it 30 years because they were wines that they were very dark in color, and I was like, so I started teaching the classes. But look how much things have changed because the first time I taught the classes, and interestingly, there are 2 people there that they were there. I guess we have aged together, David and Vivian, yeah, is that my last seminar was called Great Wine from Spain. That's it. And Great Wine from Spain, I remember, was the 70 Vega Sicilia that has just been released. They were all Gran Reservas from Rioja, and the Mas La Plana and the Pesquera, the Torres. Today, 30 years, more than 30 years later, I cannot believe it, Spain produces enough wines that I can do great wine from Spain for a whole year and not repeat any wines, you know? So this I go with what Pablo said. It's like we're always in crisis, but let's be realistic also about the change. Spain is now, since, if you want to put a date, for me it's 91. Since 91, in which the Torre Muga was, and the San Vicente, you actually carry both. They were both released. Spain is undergoing the most dramatic revolution in history ever. We have great wines all over. And a revolution that is much more important than the one of the second half of the 19th century, although you have to respect that one because there was the pioneering one and it was led by Rioja too. So we are in that period, and obviously there is a lot of changes. So I think the other thing that I think you should comment, and then later maybe we can have questions from the audience, is what do you think of the new regulations that are now in Rioja, which they recognize village wines and single vineyard wines, and how do you think they can play a role with the historic categories of Reserva and Gran Reserva, which is a fairly unique thing of Spain? So, whomever before.
I think it's good if the wine is good. And I think the fear for me is, like we've already spoken about several times, is the philosophy of celebrating the terroir is good, but we have to respect and in Rioja and in Spain in general, learn to value what is ours. And I think that's a problem that Spain has always had, right? Is looking at France, looking at Italy, and not valuing what's ours. I mean, it's kind of depressing for me to go to the great restaurants in Spain these days, and it seems that the sommeliers at these restaurants are more excited about serving champagne, grower champagne and Burgundy than oftentimes great Spanish wines. I remember being at one of my favorite restaurants in Zamora called Lera, which is a great restaurant for game. So you go and have chickpea stew with deer and wild boar and quail and stuff like this. The type of wine that you want to drink with a great, rich, structured bottle of Spanish wine. And they were going for their Michelin star, and so the sommelier was serving grower champagne and Premier Cru Burgundy in the middle of nowhere in Zamora. When it was 50 degrees outside, right? So I think the structure of the new classifications is positive, because I think Rioja has a diversity of terroir that is not understood at all in the market. Definitely not. The golden mile of Rioja, or whatever you want to call it, the golden string of villages, colloquially known as the Sonsierra, where that ranges from Aro to La Guardia. That's the best terroir in the appellation on the northern bank of the river, below the Sierra de Cantabria mountain range. No one in the U.S. market knows what that is, unfortunately.
Some people here do.
Well, sure. That's because they're your students. But that needs to be celebrated, but we have to be careful to make wines that are representative of one of the best appellations on planet Earth, that are planted with some of the best vineyards on planet Earth. And so how you reconcile the new classifications with the classic Gran Reserva wines of today, I don't know. What I do know is that a lot of these classic, famous Gran Reserva labels, if you go back probably 100 years, were oftentimes single vineyard wines. So the Castillo de Gay 1925 that you guys had was, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably a single vineyard wine back then, maybe.
Maybe that's the only one.
Yeah. And so I think that it's, I don't know how to reconcile the new system with the great classic wines, which are probably at a high price point the most commercially successful wines in the region. But I do think that philosophically it's a good idea if the style of the wines is respectful to the origin of the wines. Because there's producers like you and your father, like the Eguren family, like Ganuza, that have been making single vineyard and terroir-driven wines, like you said, since the 90s. And they've never put the village names on the label. Some of them have put the vineyard names, some of them haven't. So it's also, I do think that, the invention, the new classifications are positive, but it leaves this whole generation of very important winemakers that have been doing this now for many decades kind of in a weird spot.
No, Esmurrieta probably was single estate. And
Single
probably,
estate, yeah.
No, and probably Tondonia too, because that meander of Tondonia was unique. But most of the Gran Reservas were blending, and Rioja is a history of blendings. I still remember that my father told me that Viñarreal was made with nearly, I will say, from the 30s till 60s, 30% of Garnacha, well, 20 to 30% of Garnacha coming from the south of Rioja. this Oriental today, no, I think.
Yeah,
I know you love that word.
Pronounce it in Spanish at least.
It's something stupid, but it's
Ser Oriental. Yeah.
Rioja Baja. It has some places that are quite high in Rioja Baja, but anyway.
Please, in Spanish, Oriental, it only has a geographical sense, okay?
So,
You have to clarify that.
and I'm bringing wines from Rioja Alavesa region with the orography, the topography, and everything is just amazing. I think some of the best wines are born in the world. I mean, in places where there are tectonic movements, and so that allows you to have different exposures to the south, to the north, different altitudes, and that makes the riqueza, no? The many facilities that we have only playing with those little places. But it has been for many, many years, and still now, a blending history. And you never have a hailstorm everywhere. You never have a frost everywhere. Even some diseases like this year with the mildew, Rioja Alta was much better than Rioja Alavesa, that will have losses of 80% this year. But not you, I think. I mean, San Vicente, Briones was much better than we have. So it's nature, and you have accidents in nature, not because of the climatic change. It's having accidents the whole life since the beginning of the health. And when you have accidents, you can choose grapes, good grapes from another plot, another sub-region of Rioja. And it's true that Murrieta probably is one of those single estate without the official. But it's good that the Consejo Regulador open new ideas, and that makes me feel that someday we can use 500 liters of barrels.
No, well, yes, it's true that maybe Murrieta is one chateau, the concept of Bordeaux is chateau, no? And it's a pity that in Rioja there are not 25 chateaus, because there are not. No? And I think that they can, historically, they have great brands in Rioja. The wines from Viñarreal Oro, from Cune, I have from the 60s or 50s, they still are fantastic wines, no? So I think I prefer that than the single vineyard. The single vineyard at the end, how many bottles is, don't exist in the market. If nobody knows the wines, because there are wines of 500 bottles, 800 bottles, 1,000 bottles. Normally nobody is impossible to find in the world, no? So, well, I don't know.
Yeah. Michel Roland said once that if you produce less than 10,000 bottles,
don't exist.
That's not a wine, that's a footnote. No.
Yeah, that's the Pedro Ballesteros, MW, he says that to be important in the world is like the rule of 50-50-50, no? So it's like 50 chateaus, 50,000 bottles, and more than 50 euros each one. And that,
no, but
I will try.
Okay, just to.
And there are very few wineries who have that. I think
but
that,
see what you think. I don't think we should imitate the chateau model. I always think, and I say that in all my tastings, the way every single region decides to classify the wine, I don't think it's because that is the best way or the worst. It's because a mixture of politics, evolution, climate led you to that. Rioja, there were 14,000 growers, now it's 13,000, and 20 wineries in the 19th century I'm talking about. And therefore the wineries did not control the vineyards, so they could not make chateau wine. But by the way, this is not unique of Rioja. Champagne is like this. All the champagne that sherry is like this, port is like this. I mean, why? Because the wineries don't control the vineyards. But I think the solution of Rioja, of creating brands, and this complicated aging category was actually great and created wines of great personality. Very few wines of the world have the personality of a Gran Reserva. I know it's complicated because I remember once I was explaining in one of the classes what is a young Rioja, a crianza Rioja, Reserva Rioja, Gran Reserva Rioja, and someone asked me what is a Reserva Especial. I'm like, oh. I said, well, it's meaningless, you know. It's okay. And then someone asked me another question, and then someone asked me, why do you have in Spain these very complicated aging categories? And I said, because Spaniards, we think that you have the moral obligation to learn them, okay? So that's what I always say. When you really have to explain one style or one decision, it gets a little complicated. It's like Rioja Oriental. When you have to open a bottle of Rioja Oriental and you have to start apologizing for the name, so that was a wrong decision, clearly, no? So what do you think then? So that, but how do you see now with these new regulations that and this search of terroirs? One thing I didn't realize until Victor said it, the three winemakers you have here today, they work in the area of Las Sonsierras, the San Vicente de la Sonsierra, La Guardia, very close to Aro. So the three of them come from the best area of Rioja. But how do you see the going forward? Do you think that the viñedo singular, the single vineyard, are going to take over the Gran Reservas? Or how do you see it? Do you think there is room for both? Let's start that way now. Yeah. Pablo.
I don't know, the north of Rioja, we have the vineyard in the north of Rioja, no? In Alavesa and, well, mainly San Vicente de la Sonsierra. Every year we have problems, every year. If it's not a hailstorm, it's a frost. If not, it's a botrytis, and if not, altogether. So every year in 17 we lose the 70% of our production. The 23 we didn't produce Macan because the quality was not so good. But the problem is not the problem. The question is, well, you say before, no, that I remember the agriculture minister of the País Basque. He told me that every year is coming from the south of Rioja 100 million kilos to the north. This is the only one way to save the north many years, no? Because the climate is really the worst region that I know, no? See the climate. In Ribera del Duero we have many problems with the frost, no? In September and in May. So, but Rioja is everything in the north of Rioja is very, very complicated to produce good grapes, no? And have no problem, no? Always there are problems. And we bought all the vineyards in the north, all. So it's the north.
You, the three, yeah.
It's very, very complicated, no?
And you, Jesus, how do you see it?
Well, I did probably one of the first single vineyards in the history of Rioja, apart from Murrieta and the historic Tondonia. It was Viña del Olivo, but it was not my purpose. It was that I found a calcareous plot with lovely grapes, and in that moment in Contino we only had like the Contino Reserva, and it was a moment that it was necessary to produce something else, and I was experimenting with, as many of you know, with Graciano, and for 5-6 years before the first Olivo was 95, for 3-4 years we were experimenting also with high quantities of Graciano, different barrels, and so Contino was a result of using more Graciano into the blend than the normal average of Rioja. because we used to have like 8 hectares in that moment. It was huge, and 4 of them were muscle selection with a lot of virus and problems, but it was a cream, so it was a perfect bunches of Graciano and perfect ripeness. And today that I'm not in Contino, the owners that run today the state, they decided not to put Contino Viña del Olivo inside the Viñedo Singular, and it has more than 35 years old, less than 4,000 kilos, blah, blah, blah. Picked by hand, all the rules. They can be a Viñedo Singular. I don't know why they decided not to put, probably because it's more important to have the state of Contino than that, no? It's good to have new ways of producing wines, and there are a lot of young people with new ideas, and why not? No, I'm open-minded, so I don't say no. But as Pablo said, I think this is not exactly Rioja. I think Rioja, I mean, I remember having Jorge Muga and Isaac finding them in Tudelilla, looking for garnachas, and so that's Rioja. I mean, to look for good grapes and to produce great wines, and wines that can age and that they look to Rioja, even if they are modern style like Aro or classical style like Prado de Nea. Macan is an example. Macan is a wine that will age a lot. I mean, every year I love more and more, and I think, and everybody says this is like very Ribera style, and I don't think so. Maybe at the beginning was a little bit, but today when you taste Macan, every day is more Rioja. Well, they are learning, of course, no? And so, but I am optimistic, but at the same time, I think we need some changes.
I think the Viñedo Singular category is philosophically interesting to wine lovers. Everyone in this room would love to taste, one Viñedo Singular next to another and understand the expression of the wine and the terroir of those plots. But I think one of the things that makes Rioja great is that I don't know of another appellation on planet Earth that produces such high volumes of such high quality wines at such prices that provide value to the consumer. And I don't say cheap, right? Because I don't think a $35 or $40 bottle of wine is cheap. But I don't know what other appellations on planet Earth you can find wineries producing 1 million bottles of a great bottle of wine like a Muga Reserva. And it's not the only one in the appellation that produces those volumes at that high level of quality. And I think a lot of the commercial success that Rioja's had over the last 100 years is because of that. A lot of the great famous Gran Reservas are wines that produce 100,000 bottles a year. These are not small production wines. And just because they're large production doesn't mean they're inferior, by the way, either, because if you go to Bordeaux, these top cuvées that sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars a bottle are also produced in very large quantities. And so while I think the Viñedo Singular classification is really intellectually interesting to wine lovers and might help Rioja raise the average price, I definitely don't think that they're going to take commercial success away from the Gran Reserva classification like you asked, because the parameters for that to happen just don't exist. You would need to have Viñedos Singulares that are, large production, which at that point it kind of defeats the purpose, right? And you would need wines that would be competitively priced with the Gran Reservas, which I don't think that can happen. And I think that, if you look at the price brackets of where Spain is working and not working, the vast majority of the success right now is between $13 and $19.99 on the shelf. Below $13 is suffering considerably. And another price bracket that's not working very well right now is $20 to $30. But it's unfortunate because I think that's where a lot of the best wines in Spain and a lot of the best value exists in Spain right now. And so trying to find ways to engage new consumers and have them fall in love with the wine drinking experience at a younger age with wines that are very, very good at $23, $24, $25, and having the quality of those wines be certified by an appellation that's focused on quality, I think should be the priority. I don't necessarily disagree with the Viñedo Singular strategy, like you said, Jesus. It's interesting, it's fun. You can't, I think it's good to promote new things, but I see it more as as a cherry on top and less as a base of commercial success, if that makes sense.
Cherry on top is a good image. Yeah.
Tony, we have La Nieta and we have El Pisón, and as you said at the beginning, if they produce good wines
Yeah, it's great.
and Rioja characters, why
Yeah.
not? No?
But now there are more than 150 Viñedos Singulares recognized.
And many of them registered by very large wineries too, which I think is
Yeah.
an important thing. I think
Yeah.
you know, my one criticism of the category is that it's very easy. How many vineyards? What is it's? I think it's 4,000 kilos per hectare, hand harvested, 35 years. I don't know. There are many vineyards on planet Earth that fall into that category, and so understanding soil types, understanding, mesoclimate, microclimate in the vineyard, those things to me would be to have more stringent requirements for what vineyards can fall into that category.
I mean, for me, one interesting thing, and Jesus and I, we were talking yesterday about this, is that now we really still don't fully know how the modern new Riojas of the 90s are going to age, because we're still only like 30 years. But precisely Muga, Manu Muga, no? He proposed me, no, it wasn't my idea, it was his idea, that why don't I do a comparison between Prado Enea and Torre Muga? And then I said, yeah, send me the wines and I'll do it. I mean, I said, okay, great idea. And then he sent the wines, and he was nice enough to send the first vintage of Torre Muga, 91, and started the series there, all the way to the youngest. So we have the oldest, the youngest, and 4 in the middle. And it's amazing how, as the wines get older, and I'm sure someone here was in that tasting, the wines start to resemble each other. So there is still a stylistically personality of Rioja that might not depend only on the single vineyard. And that's all the reason why I'm always defending Gran Reservas, despite our convoluted system of aging, no? The joke I made before, actually the whole joke is that that person told me, but in Spain you all know, the one I told him, you have the moral obligation, said, but in Spain you all know this? And I said, yeah, in Spain when we get baptized, we get that knowledge automatically. We all know it. So we can open the questions from you. You can ask any questions, and we'll go. Yeah, there's someone.
Yes. I live in Argentina. I've been living there for several years. And of course, the whole thing of wine consumption is down all over the world, as you very well expressed. But one of the big changes that I've noticed is that since Parker sold his Wine Advocate to the Singapore group, and then Michelin bought 40%, and then they bought the other 60%. So if you have the best rating company for restaurants and now the best rating company for wines, I've always thought that perhaps a Michelin could have a separate category of restaurants that that have great food and great wines, and they have all these pairings. The reason why I say this is because Mendoza, like most regions, are suffering, but because of wine tourism compared with food, it's now created a new category where 7 of the only wines rated by Michelin in Argentina, 4 are from wineries, and the food and the wine pairings. So I believe that there could be a new, this is just a value added to work with the wineries. I'm not talking about it's going to be the solution, but I thought that it might be a new area to explore. And I thought, since Spain has fantastic food and fantastic wines, I was curious if you would consider that kind of option in your marketing.
Can I say one quick thing? Okay, I haven't read the article because we've been busy preparing this, but Michelin announced yesterday, which I was yesterday or this morning, I don't remember, that they're gonna start rating wines. So I thought, really? They own the Advocate. I mean, why are they gonna start rating wines? So I don't know. You have anything to say to that? No.
Best restaurant in Aro is Muga. To eat, I mean, I can.
Best restaurant in Aro is Muga.
Yeah. Well, now we have Nublo. It's one-star Michelin that they are doing really well. But before Nublo, Miguel Caño, the chef, that was 2 years ago, I think. The best way to go is, the problem is that you are not allowed to go and eat. Well, that's a joke, but I mean, make something strange, no? That Michelin can rate wines and restaurants.
I mean, the most ambitious restaurant in Ribera del Duero is called Amphibian. It's owned by a winery, Pau de Carroveja. But they have more foreign wines than Spanish wines, and they have wine from all over. And you taste like 50 wines easily in one dinner. So if you want to, or you can. More questions? You had a question?
Yeah. Certainly, following up on what he said, 20, 30, 40 years ago, physicians all over the world would say a glass of wine every day is good for your health. And in the last 10 years, the opinion has reversed to the point where they're discouraging, and in fact, some articles have pointed out that any amount of alcohol is a bad thing. So that's certainly one pressure that in your industry you're facing. But I also heard some sense that there were other pressures in the industry that you were facing. And it wasn't clear to me. Other than the reduction in consumption, what other pressures are you guys facing?
Who wants to go?
I don't know. See, every time is an attack to the wine with the health, no? But I don't hear attack to the marijuana. The marijuana is good for the health, or it's only the marijuana is permitted in the United States or many countries, no? And looks like this is good for the health. And this year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I suppose that everything, if you take with moderation, or this is not bad, no? If you drink so much water, maybe it's bad for you.
I'm sure.
It's about moderation, and I think the peer-reviewed articles that talk about alcohol consumption, there's less than you would imagine that actually truly identify alcohol as bad for you. I think a lot of the articles that come out in the news are sensationalist news. And I also think if you look at the population data, some of the healthiest populations in the history of mankind are Mediterranean populations. And it's the same thing with seed oils, right? Everyone's scared of seed oils now, but what countries have the highest life expectancies on Earth? You know, East Asian countries that consume sesame seed oil like it's water, right? So I think a lot of it's sensationalist. I agree with Pablo in saying that it's all about consumption and about healthier life habits, you know, getting your butt up in the morning and going to the gym, eating well, probably be fine. Just don't drink too much, you know.
I suppose that everybody will need to celebrate the best moment in the life, a little bit of wine, and to support the big problems in the life, another little bit of wine, no?
Besides, Spain is one of the countries with the highest life expectancy, and if you go by many medical peer-reviewed articles, and I come from the academic environment, we do everything wrong. We have dinner at the wrong time, we have lunch at the wrong time, we have the wrong breakfast, we have whatever. So when people said that, even in my classes, I said, look, life expectancy in the US is 77. In Spain, it's 84. and we're a poorer country, so it must be something that we're doing that is fine. So maybe we should change the theory, you know, instead of starting from a point of view that this is good, maybe we should do the opposite. I remember one time, one person that is here too, sent me the link to a series of articles on Harvard has done some experiment following, I don't know how many hundred people for like 10 years eating jamón, eating Spanish ham or something like that. And then turned out to be that the ones that didn't eat it, they were better than the ones who have eaten jamón. And I told him, I said, look, in Spain, we're doing that experiment for basically 1,500 years. And we don't get the same results. Huh? we normally get the opposite, so I don't know. It's actually my academic field, methodology of science, so really, I'm not gonna get into details there, but maybe we should review the theory before we start doing experiments, okay?
So focusing on Rioja in particular and the future, there were references earlier to Bordeaux uprooting vineyards, and there were also some references to the market challenges in terms of the demand for wine. If we were to look at Rioja 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, would you expect a reduction in the production of hectares under grapes? Would it be about the same, or would it grow? And then relatedly, in Helio's classes, we've been lucky enough to taste wines produced from vineyards at higher elevations. And do you see that as a trend in the medium to longer term?
Well, my point of view is that for the first time in the history of Rioja, in the last 2 years, we are making distillation of wine, excellent. And we are subsidizing green harvest, like this year, which by the way, I think it was a mistake because the esporas from the mildew went spread everywhere because of that green harvest that somebody subsidized. And at the end, distillation and subsidized green harvest is with our money, with the money of everyone. So, again, I said, there's too many hectares in Rioja, and too much grapes, and it's difficult to say that, but I think we need to reduce the production. Pablo disagrees, but I think it's too much.
It is too much?
The market must do that, no? If it's necessary to put away vineyards. At the end, the market, if we cannot sell the wines, we must make something, no? It's the only one solution, but it's not the government who find the solution, no? We must find the solution, or the market must find the solution.
Victor.
And about the
altitude.
In Ribera del Duero, if you put in the top, you lose every year the vineyard, no? Because it's very cold, no? We have 3 weeks ago, we was in harvest, and we have all the week in the morning between 0.1 and 0.3, and all the wind machines working. So maybe it's the global warming. I don't know if this is the problem, but this is the so I don't know if in the future it's necessary to move the vineyards to higher, but today I don't think so.
Again, but I'm not going to give a name, but there's a wealthy American that went to Gerona, even if he's not in Ampurdá and a D.O., he went to a mountain, and as he has money, he planted like 10 hectares at very high altitude. So, and he put in the labels, it's a mountain wine, and extreme viticulture, things like that, no? In 5 years, he only got one harvest in 5 years. So I think he's gonna retire. But if it's really time losing money, it's no way. And sometimes when they say, no, we planted at 1,000 meters of altitude, I work in Bullas in El Valle de la Cenicha at 1,000 meters of altitude, and it's very cold nights, very hot mornings. But I can feel, I promise you, I can feel that I'm very close to the sun. So imagine the skin of a grape. So you have to create a, how do you say, el sistema foliar.
The canopy.
The canopy. You have to think about where you are to create shadows and to regulate that. If you don't think that and you put an espaldera trailing systems, you will burn your grapes, and even if the nights are very cold.
I don't know how much we have to move higher because we're already very high.
Exactly.
Spain is the second highest country in elevation in Europe after Switzerland. And so, I mean, Ribera, Bullas, and many, some of the highest altitude vineyards, maybe the highest altitude vineyards for Garnacha, which is a Spanish variety, Grenache, anywhere in the world are in Aragon. And, Calatayud is a region that in the last 30 years has uprooted 90% of the vineyards. So I think we're already there, and moving higher might not be necessary, but I do think that, we're well insulated and protected from the issues of climate change, especially compared to competitors like Bordeaux, who are at sea level and who are really going to have problems. So I think we're already there. I think, maintaining traditional viticulture, like Jesus was saying, goblet training, old bush vines is probably a bigger priority than moving towards clonal selections of international and even indigenous varieties, but clonal selection of those indigenous varieties on trellises. I think that's more of a concern than altitude,
Yeah, in Spain, keep in mind that now there are fashions in the wine world, and today it's very fashionable to say that your vineyards have high altitude. So now when critics come to Spain, I even tell winemakers, just tell them that you have high altitude. I mean, Spain is 600 meters. This is basically more than 1,800 feet. You read the magazine and it says, oh, these vineyards are high altitude, 1,500. So basically 80% of Spain is high altitude, just by definition. I mean, the whole plateau of central Spain, what we call the meseta, in case that you're not familiar, is really 600. Madrid, I think, is the highest capital in Europe. It's 600 altitude. I mean, my house, my house there, we're used to be at 600 meters or 900, all of us. I mean, it's normal. So yeah, now it's fashionable to say, because the wines might look a little bit more Burgundian and fresher, so high altitude. The question there.
Hi. When I was first out of college, my boss was, he founded Cuisinarts, and he was French, and he made me join this group called American Institute of Wine and Food, and Julia Child, and I met Mr. Have you ever heard of Robert Mondavi? Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's how I started out with wine. I can't drink California wine, the chemicals in them. And I ask you now, why can I, after moving back from Charleston up to Greenwich, I can't find Rioja wines, even though I've been in Logroño, in every place. You're my favorite. They look at me like cross-eyed when I say, I'd like such and such, I'd like such and you mentioned lower sugar. I'm trying to do that because if I have a glass of wine, sometimes it wakes me up, in the middle of the night, and then I go back to sleep. But I'm thinking distribution, and I follow, because my son lives in Spain, I follow many things on Instagram. I've never gone near Facebook, etc. I would love to see more of you explaining what I love about your region and your wines on Instagram, in your promotions, and because I'm a marketing person. So anyhow, thank you very much, and I had the best time on the Elephant Walk in Logroño, and she knows all about that street.
You are welcome to repeat.
Anybody has any questions?
So my question was going to be about climate change, but I think you guys have already touched on it while I was waiting for my turn. As you hinted, a lot of, Britain, France, they're suffering because they had low elevations. Now you can have a champagne equivalent coming out of the UK. Is the Spanish style of winemaking going to change to adapt to global warming? Are you seeing more sugar in the grapes, for example? What's the strategy for dealing with that, and how is it going to compare to the traditional wines we have so far?
Who wants to?
It's a big debate about that. And part is if you go higher in altitude, or you look at another kind of canopy to protect the grapes, or you go for earlier harvesting, which I think that is happening. It's true. Picking grapes earlier compared to what I know since I was a child in Cune, and I remember to see some snow with the grapes. Yeah, but at the end, when you have cold years, and we have cold years, it's the same. We have cold years and we have hot years, and so global warming, I wouldn't say that. I'm not sure about that. So you can't do changes all the time when it's not very clear the direction. No? I think every year is different. I have 32 harvests under my shoulders, and I didn't find any year that was equal to the other. You have different problems every year, and you have to take decisions every year. It's true that you can plan. I mean, maybe I will have some south exposure vines, and then I will buy some terroir in high altitude, and then I will combine, or I will do a very early harvest and then a second harvest later, and then I will try to blend them. You can have some techniques to fight against some difficult years, but every year is different. We still have cold years, believe me. I want rain. It's not raining anymore. We have a lot of rain.
Pablo, climate change?
Well, I don't believe in the climate change. The climate is always changing, no? And there are periods more dry, less. The great winters or the great harvest is not when it's raining a lot. It's when it's necessary to rain. This is the complicated is that rain when it's necessary to rain, no? So at the end, the vineyard don't need so much water to live. And the problem in the vineyard in general, I think, I don't know in other countries, but I think it's the same. Before, many years ago in the vineyards, everybody produced a lot of grapes, many. In Rioja happened 40, 50 years. How was this man from the Aro, from the Jesús? Manuel. No, he was very famous. He was one institution. Sí, el de la estación enológica. Jesús. Well, it's the same. I heard to him 50 years ago, the people produced 10,000 kilograms in the vineyard. And obviously they are speaking about the acidity. I am hearing about the problem of the acidity in the wine from the beginning, always. But if you produce 10,000 kilograms or 12,000 kilograms or 14,000 kilograms, you have a lot of acidity, but never arrive to the maduration. But arrive Parker, and Parker is the big climate change in the world of the wine, because he wants wines with more concentration, with more maduration, with more of everything. And then the people change the work in the vineyard. No? I think this is the happen in the wine. No, now with 4,000 kilograms, I don't know if in the future will be more. I remember 40 years ago in Ribera del Duero to arrive to 13.5 in alcohol was difficult sometimes because the production was higher. No, today is normal to have 14 degrees, but Toro has a lot of everything. Is still with 15 degrees from the beginning that I know. No, 15 degrees depend. You can drink one wine that has 12 of alcohol and you feel alcoholic, and one wine with 15 you don't feel that is alcoholic. Yeah, at the end is the balance in the wine, no? And the wine don't need to have a lot of acidity. Is the perfect balance in the acidity, no? And this is a great wine, no? And I think for that today we produce more great wines than ever. No?
Okay, one more question, last question. After that, we're gonna go up. You're gonna have the chance to taste the wines and talk to the winemakers. So one last question.
Yes, hopefully this is a quick question. Demand is down here in the U.S. We may be seeing a shift in the global order in terms of trade. What other markets, possibly Asia, do you see that making up some of those numbers that you're seeing? Could you speak to some of the other markets in the world that you may be making up? Thank you.
Well, no more American wines are being sold in Canada due to the genius trade policies of our president. And so Canada is one of the growing markets for Spain. It's a monopoly system, though, which means that the government makes exorbitant margins on the products, and so that makes it really hard to compete in terms of price. So it's a growing market for Spain, but typically with pretty bad wines, unfortunately. But I think Latin America is a developing market. I'm not super familiar with Asia. These two could speak more to that than I could, but I hear that it's a challenging market as well. I know many parts of Europe are challenged right now, so.
See, there are many, I don't know, maybe Asia will grow, I am sure that in the future, no? There are problems in China, but China will drink. I don't know if India is always the country for the future, but never arrive the future in India with the wine, no? I don't know what happened, maybe you know. But
they say I know because my wife is Indian. That's why they say. That's why they look at me.
And Africa, there are countries in Africa who start to drink wine, and so it's necessary to travel, to move, and to show the wines to the people, no? And drink a little with moderation, but a little more.
But this is the biggest market on earth, and it will continue to be. And I think there's a lot of doom and gloom, but Spain's performing better than most other imported countries. We're down less than Italy and France, and down significantly less than countries like Argentina or others. So I'm very optimistic, and on the opposite side of every valley is a big boom. I think there's been a huge problem in the industry with saturation in the market. There's way too many brands, like Jesus alluded to in the beginning, way too many fake wines, private labels, fake wines that are made by nameless corporations that you go and they come up with a nice marketing story for the website. They post some pictures of a vineyard here or there. They get 92 points from a critic and they sell 100,000 bottles, and all of a sudden you have a winery, right? And so I think there's been a tremendous amount of consolidation with the distributors. So the distributors are paying less attention than ever. And it's a federally mandated system of 3-tier alcohol distribution, so the distributors have to exist. They have so many brands that they've become lazy. If they lose one brand, they don't care because they'll sell the other guy's brand. So I think all these things have created a difficult market. But a difficult market is what's necessary to clean out all the, excuse my language, to clean out all the shit. You know, there's a lot of people, like Pablo said, there's a lot of people that want to, in the wine business, that want to sit back on their hands, not travel, and collect orders over a cell phone texting. I mean, I got an embarrassing text from a salesperson at one of our larger distributors this year, texting a deal offer, and he's added a bunch of emojis and stars and thumbs up images, and it was embarrassing. I was like, this is how lazy we've become in the wine industry. And a guy like this, who is this, if I can be a little blunt, is the CEO of the most prestigious winery in Spain, travels 50% of the year. I mean, that's how you sell wine, by being in front of people. And I think if we can give the market time to, you know, clean out a lot of the garbage, and work harder than ever, and find ways to re-engage, not only with consumers, but with buyers who are, you know, restaurants are struggling to survive and thus are employing less qualified wine professionals than ever, finding ways to educate those people, engage with those people so they can help engage the consumers, empowering retailers. You know, I think the retailers also are scared of what's going on. I've had conversations with many retailers whose sales are down 20%, you know, compared to the previous 12 months. And so they're trying to get creative by buying private labels, for example. They might go to Rioja, find a co-op, create a private label that's super cheap, and they'll say, buy this, you know, private label from me because it's Viña Tondonia at $9.99, which of course it's not. But finding ways to engage with these people so that we can get to the other end of the valley. But I think the U.S. is, my friend Eddie here is in the audience, and together we went to the Venice tasting, you know, prestigious wine publication, the grand tasting that they do every year in New York. And they had a great strategy, which was, you know, the full ride ticket for you know, everyone was, I don't know how much, hundreds of dollars. But they did a great thing, which was offering people under 40 years old to come to the event for $50, I think it was. And the room was packed with young people. So all these narratives about young people not wanting wine, I don't really buy it. And I think that this will continue to be, you know, the biggest market in the world. It'll continue to be the most exigente, the most demanding in terms of the quality of the wines. And yeah, I'm monologuing, so I'll stop. But
so
I'm optimistic.
Before we go outside, and just to finish, and now that we have here some of the authorities in Rioja and all, and before we were talking about wines in wine list of restaurants, the most prestigious kind of wine school in the city is the one that gives the WSET. So please, the WSET, the notes on the Spanish wines are so bad. So I think that a good investment will be to pay someone to actually write good notes. And I tell you seriously, I have given to some people here the Spanish lessons in Spanish wines because they don't like the ones of the WSET. Keep in mind that those people are going to be the ones that are going to become sommelier, distributors. They're going to be the ones that are going to decide which wines go to restaurants. And if they study under the most prestigious one, they get an extremely poor education on Spanish wines. So, and partially it's because the wine notes that the students are given by the institution itself, they are, I'm not going to use the word that Victor used, so let's say they say they can easily be better, okay? So that actually would be a great investment.
Why does it happen, right? Like why, like in the school that they're teaching these people to pour wines, why there are these bad concepts or poor concepts of Spanish wine? What are we doing wrong?
In my opinion, out of laziness. It's very easy to study, to be proficient in French and Italian wines and in California because so it's a cycle. Then you become, then later that's where you find so we have to try to break that cycle with the future professionals. And if the WSET, I mean, I don't know, here I cannot see all of you because I have the lights, but some people in the WSET have come to my classes and have actually told me, can you really give us classes on Spanish wine? Because I come to your classes and then I read their notes and so we should try to produce better notes for them. It will be very, very influential in the long term because those people are going to be importers, distributors, sommeliers. They're going to be all that. Okay, so thank you, all of you, for coming. Now we'll go. You have a white Rioja to start, and then all the other ones are red, okay? And then you can talk to the winemakers. Time. Thank you.